What would you do if your boss, the person you admire most in the world, texted you help in the middle of a disastrous date, and when you rushed to rescue her, you realized you'd been secretly in love with her for years? I was just the executive assistant to a brilliant CEO, a woman who could move millions with a single phone call, and who always seemed to have everything under control. But it only took one night, one invented client emergency, and one unexpected hug on a cold sidewalk to completely change the way we saw each other. What started as a simple rescue from a boring date turned into a love story that almost didn't happen because of fear, pride, and silence. Stay until the very end, because what began with a desperate text message will end with a decision that changes both of our lives forever. If you like emotional stories about secret love, forbidden lines between boss and assistant, second chances, and brave decisions, hit the like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next story. I watched my boss check her phone for the third time in 5 minutes, and every instinct I had told me something was wrong. Alexandra Hart never got distracted during our Friday afternoon meetings. She ran quantum dynamics with laser focus, making multi-million-dollar decisions as if she were choosing what to have for lunch. But that day, sitting across from me in her glass-walled office high above the city, she looked like she desperately wanted to be anywhere else. "Everything okay?" I asked, pretending to glance at my notes, as if I hadn't noticed the tight line of her jaw. "Fine," she said. It was the kind of fine that meant absolutely nothing was fine. I'd been her executive assistant for 3 years. Long enough to recognize the way she tucked her honey blonde hair behind her ear when she was stressed. Long enough to know the difference between her real smile and the one she used for investors and magazine covers. Long enough to fall completely, hopelessly in love with her, and keep it locked behind my ribs where she would never see it. She picked up her phone again and sighed. "It's just my mother," she said, turning the screen face down. "Reminding me about dinner tonight." "Dinner sounds nice," I said, keeping my voice casual, as if my stomach hadn't just twisted. She let out a short, humorless laugh. "It's a blind date. My mother's been setting them up for months. This one's an investment banker who apparently owns 3 vacation homes." I felt something heavy drop inside my chest, but my expression didn't move. "Sounds successful," I managed. "Sounds boring," she muttered, then caught herself. "Sorry, that was unprofessional. You're allowed to have feelings about your personal life," I said. For the first time that afternoon, she actually looked at me, not as her assistant, not as the guy who managed her calendar and brought her coffee, but as a person sitting across from her. For a heartbeat, there was something in her blue eyes that made my pulse spike. But then she glanced at her watch, and the moment vanished. "I should go. I need to go home and change into something my mother will approve of." I watched her gather her things, wanting to say 100 things I had no right to say. "Don't go. You'll hate it. Stay here. Stay with me." Instead, I swallowed everything. "Have a good time," I said. "Have a good weekend." What I meant was, please let him be awful. Please don't fall in love with someone else. She smiled at me from the doorway. "Have a good weekend, Liam." I had no idea how much that weekend would change both of our lives. 3 hours later, I was halfway through a sad frozen dinner and a documentary about the history of bookstores in my tiny apartment. That was my usual Friday routine. Cheap food, quiet TV, no surprises. Then my phone buzzed on the table, and Alexandra's name lit up the screen. I swiped it open. "Help." On a scale of 1 to 10, this is a -100. I sat up so fast I nearly knocked over my glass of water. Adrenaline shot through me before my brain had fully processed the words. My thumbs moved on their own. "That bad?" Her reply came instantly. "He's been talking about his yacht collection for 40 minutes. Send an asteroid. Or a flood. Anything." I looked down at my untouched dinner. At my empty apartment. At the opportunity one never thought I'd have. She was asking me to save her. I pushed my chair back, grabbed my jacket and keys. "Be there in 15 minutes, I texted. "Client emergency." "You're the best." "Riverside Bistro," she wrote back. Riverside Bistro was the kind of place where the portions were tiny and the bill made you question your life choices. I'd picked Alexandra up from business dinners there before, when she was whining and dining investors. But tonight was different. Tonight, I wasn't going as her driver or her calendar manager. I was going as her escape route. My heart hammered as I pushed open the heavy glass doors and stepped inside. The lighting was soft, the voices low, the silverware polished within an inch of its life. I scanned the dining room. There she was, in the corner, sitting across from a man who looked exactly like the word Trevor would look. Expensive suit, expensive watch, expensive ego. He gestured to himself while he talked, as if he were the main character in every story that had ever existed. Alexandra sat opposite him, her posture perfect, her smile polite. But her eyes were screaming for help. I straightened my shoulders and walked toward them, doing my best to look urgent and official instead of jealous and desperate. Alexandra, thank goodness I found you, I said, letting just enough tension into my voice to sound credible. She looked up. Relief washed over her face, so clearly I almost forgot my lines. Liam, what's wrong? She asked, already shifting into CEO mode. We have a situation with the Piton account, I said, picking a name out of nowhere. Their CEO is threatening to pull the contract unless we can provide revised projections tonight. I know it's your evening off, but I can't access the files without your authorization. Piton didn't exist. There was no angry CEO, no contract at risk. But Trevor didn't know that. How unprofessional, Trevor said, setting down his wine glass with an audible click. Surely this can wait until Monday. $3 million can't wait, Alexandra said smoothly, already standing. She turned to Trevor with a practiced note of regret. I'm so sorry. Running a company means emergencies don't follow a schedule. You're leaving our date for work? He snapped. For your assistant? I'm leaving to save my company, she corrected, her voice cool. Thank you for dinner. Without another word, she grabbed her purse and headed for the exit. I followed her, doing my best not to look too satisfied at the stunned expression on Trevor's face. The cold November air hit us as we stepped outside. For a moment, neither of us spoke, just our breath forming little clouds in the night. Then Alexandra turned to me and started laughing. Not a polite chuckle, not a corporate laugh, a real, full, unrestrained laugh that lit up her entire face. There is no Piton account, is there? She asked between laughs. I tried to look innocent. I have no idea what you're talking about. Liam Foster, she said, shaking her head, still smiling. Did you just invent an entire client emergency to rescue me from a bad date? You texted for help, I said. I helped. She stared at me for a long moment, searching my face for something. I had no idea what she found. Then she did something I hadn't prepared for at all. She hugged me. Right there on the sidewalk, in the middle of the city, she stepped forward and wrapped her arms around me like I was the only solid thing in a world that didn't stop moving. For a second, I froze. Then, finally, my body caught up to my heart, and I hugged her back. She fit against me so perfectly it hurt. Thank you, she said quietly, her voice close to my ear. You have no idea how much I needed that. When she pulled back, her eyes were bright. Not exactly with tears, but with something that made my chest go tight. Want to get real dinner? I blurted out before I could second-guess myself. That place looked like they were serving food for ants. She laughed again, softer this time. I would love that, she said. We ended up at Rosie's Diner, a 24-hour place 2 blocks from my apartment that served breakfast all day and had coffee that was way better than the decor suggested. Cracked vinyl booths, a sticky counter, a jukebox that only played songs from the 70s. It was the opposite of Riverside Bistro in every possible way. I'd been going there ever since I moved to the city, back when I was barely making rent and living on diner coffee and hope. Seeing Alexandra walk through that door in her elegant dress and heels was like watching a movie star step onto the wrong set. She slid into the booth across from me, glancing around with a mixture of amusement and nostalgia. I haven't been to a place like this in years, she said, picking up the laminated menu. Too simple for you, I teased. Too real for the people I usually have dinner with, she said. Then she winced. That sounded awful. I didn't mean you're not real. I just meant. I know what you meant, I said. And I did. I'd spent 3 years watching her navigate a world of business dinners and networking events where everyone wore masks, where appearances were everything, and where success was measured in deals closed and hands shaken, not in happiness. The waitress came over. Betty, an older woman who knew my order by heart. The usual, hon, I said. And whatever she wants. Alexandra ordered a burger and fries. Betty nodded approvingly and walked away. So, Alexandra said, folding her hands on the table, did my text really sound that desperate? Yes, I said honestly. But also, I know you. When you're actually having a good time, you forget to check your phone. You were texting me, which meant you were looking for any excuse not to pay attention to your date. Her eyes widened. You noticed that? I notice everything about you, I thought. The way she taps her pen 3 times before a big decision. How she drinks her coffee black in meetings, but adds cream when she's alone. The fact that she wears her grandmother's bracelet on important days. Part of my job is paying attention, I said instead. Right, she said softly. Your job. Something flickered across her face, but before I could understand it, our food arrived. We ate in comfortable silence for a few minutes. Then she spoke again. My mother set up that date, she said, dragging a fry through ketchup. She's been doing it for 6 months. Every week, another successful man who checks all her boxes. And none of yours? I asked. She smiled sadly. I don't think my boxes matter to her. She thinks I'm married to my work, that I'll wake up at 50, alone in a big empty house, and regret not settling down. Would you? I asked. Regret it. She thought about it. I don't know, she admitted. Maybe. But I don't want to marry someone just because I'm afraid of being alone. I want what my parents had before my dad died. That partnership. That friendship. Someone who sees me. Not the company. Not the money. Not the image. Me. The way she said sees me twisted something inside my chest. I saw her every day. I saw her when she was exhausted and when she was proud, when she held back tears and when she let herself laugh. But I was her assistant, the one who scheduled meetings and took notes. Why would she ever look at me as anything more? You'll find that, I said. Someone who sees you. Maybe you already have, I thought. And maybe we're both too scared to admit it. Over the next few weeks, the rescue missions became a pattern. Alexandra's mother would schedule another blind date with another perfect man. The evening would start politely. Then, somewhere between appetizers and dessert, something would go wrong. The man would brag too much, or listen too little, or treat the waitress badly. And my phone would buzz. Help. Disaster level. Extreme. Please invent another emergency. I became an expert at fabricating crises. A sudden audit. A server shutdown. A contract on the brink of collapse. I'd show up at whatever expensive restaurant they were in, deliver my carefully rehearsed lines, and watch as Alexandra seized the excuse with a mixture of relief and apology. And every single time, we ended up at Rosie's diner afterward. Those nights were the best of my life. We talked about everything. Books we loved, movies that had quietly broken us, dreams we'd abandoned because they seemed impractical. She told me about growing up with impossible expectations, about the pressure to be perfect, about losing her father and having to be strong for everyone else. I told her about my family, about wanting to write but being terrified to actually try, about always feeling like an outsider in the polished world she moved in so easily. The more time we spent together outside the office, the harder I fell. And sometimes, in the quiet moments, when she smiled at me across the table, when her hand brushed mine reaching for the salt, when she looked at me like I'd said something brilliant when I'd only been rambling, I let myself believe she might feel something too. But I never said anything. She was my boss. Crossing that line might ruin everything. Then came the Saturday that changed everything. Alexandra texted me around 7 in the evening. New date. Potential disaster. Rescue plan available. This time, the man's name was Preston, a finance executive her mother was apparently thrilled about. I grabbed my jacket and my keys, calculated the drive across town, and aimed to arrive at the usual 30-minute mark, late enough for the date to be clearly bad, early enough for the rescue to seem tragic but necessary. I started the car. Halfway there, the engine made a noise I'd never heard before, a horrible grinding screech, followed by a sputter. Then silence. I tried the ignition once. Nothing. Twice. Nothing. 3 times. The engine was dead. A chill that had nothing to do with the weather ran down my spine. I grabbed my phone and called Alexandra, but the call went straight to voicemail. She always put her phone on silent during dates, trying to be polite even when the guy was a complete disaster. I started texting her. My car just broke down. Trying to fix it. Calling a tow truck. I might not make it in time. I'm so sorry. Are you okay? While I waited, I called every tow service in the area. It was Saturday night. Accidents everywhere. They were all busy. I sat in that dark parking lot for 20 minutes, imagining her inside the restaurant, checking her phone under the table, wondering where her usual escape hatch was. The guilt stuck in my throat. By the time the tow truck finally hauled my car away and dropped me back at my apartment, along with a painful repair estimate, I knew it was too late. I sent one more text. Car died completely. I'm really sorry. Are you okay? 30 minutes later, my phone lit up. Don't worry. Preston is actually nice. We're going to get drinks. I stared at those words until they blurred. Preston is actually nice. That was what I'd wanted for her, wasn't it? Someone good. Someone who deserved her. Someone easy. So why did it feel like somebody had reached into my chest and squeezed until it hurt to breathe? The next week felt like slow torture. Alexandra went on 3 more dates with Preston. Each time she came back to the office glowing. She talked about the restaurants they tried, how easy the conversation was, how different he was from the other men her mother had picked. I smiled. I asked questions. I added his name to her calendar as if it didn't stab me every time I typed it. I think he might be the one, she said one Friday afternoon, almost in awe. Is that crazy to think after just a week? Not crazy, I lied. When you know, you know. That weekend, I made a decision. I couldn't keep doing this. Couldn't keep sitting 3 feet away from her desk, watching her fall for someone else, pretending it didn't break me a little more every day. I'd been careful with my money over the past 3 years. Careful enough to finally have options. There was an opening at Sterling Media, a competitor across town. Better pay, new challenges, and most importantly, distance. On Monday morning, I typed up my resignation letter. My hands shook as I wrote the words, 2 weeks notice, grateful for the opportunity, excited for the next chapter. I printed it, signed it, slid it into an envelope with her name on the front, and placed it on her desk before she arrived. Then I sat at my own desk and waited, my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my teeth. When Alexandra walked in at 8:30, she was humming to herself. She wore a blue dress that matched her eyes, her hair loose around her shoulders. She carried 2 cups of coffee from the shop downstairs, one for her, one for me. That simple gesture nearly made me tear the letter off her desk and pretend none of this was happening. Then she saw the envelope. Her humming died. She picked it up, read her name in my handwriting, and went absolutely still. Liam, she said, her voice very quiet. What is this? I stood up. We should probably talk in your office, I said. She nodded slowly and walked inside, still holding the envelope and both coffees. I followed and closed the door behind us. Go ahead, she said softly. Open it. Her hand trembled slightly as she tore the envelope and unfolded the letter. I watched her eyes scan the words. Resignation, 2 weeks, new opportunity, grateful. You're leaving, she said. It wasn't a question. Sterling Media made me an offer, I said, using the speech I'd rehearsed all weekend. It's a good opportunity. Better pay, room for growth. I think it's time for me to move on. Move on, she repeated slowly. Because of Preston. I hadn't expected her to go straight there. My mind blanked. What? No, this isn't. Don't lie to me, Liam, she snapped, and now there was hurt in her voice. For 3 years, you've never once mentioned wanting to leave. Not once. Then I start dating someone, and suddenly there's a resignation letter on my desk. Do you think I'm stupid? Of course not, I said, stunned. You're the smartest person I know. This isn't about. Then what is it about? She demanded, standing now, the letter crumpling in her hand. Tell me the truth, Liam. Why are you really leaving? Her blue eyes were blazing, demanding a level of honesty I'd spent years avoiding. The office seemed smaller, the air thicker. I opened my mouth to give her another polished lie. Nothing came out. I was tired of lying, tired of pretending, tired of standing on the sidelines of my own life. Because I can't do this anymore, I said quietly. Do what? She shot back. Your job? You're the best assistant I've ever had. If this is about money, I can. It's not about money, I said, more forcefully than I intended. It's about walking into this office every day and being professional when all I want to do is tell you how I really feel. It's about listening to you talk about Preston and your perfect dates and how he might be the one, and having to smile and be supportive while it's killing me inside. Her anger froze. Her expression shifted to something unreadable. What are you saying? She whispered. I'm saying, I took a breath that felt like jumping off a cliff. I'm in love with you. The words tumbled out, 3 years late. I've been in love with you since the first month I started working here. I continued, the dam broken now. When you stayed late to help me figure out the filing system, even though you had a dinner meeting. I fell in love with how kind you are, how brilliant, how you remember everyone's birthday and check on them when they're having a hard time. I couldn't stop. I fell in love with the way you laugh at terrible jokes and how you always order too much food at restaurants because you want to try everything. Those rescue missions weren't just about saving you from bad dates. They were the best nights of my life because I got to see the real you, not the CEO everyone else sees. The woman who talks about her dad and admits she's scared sometimes. My voice shook. And then Preston came along, and he's perfect on paper. Successful, charming, able to take you to all those restaurants without having to save up for a month. He's what everyone would say you deserve. And I'm just your assistant who was stupid enough to fall for his boss. So yes, I'm leaving because I can't stand here and watch you fall in love with him. I can't keep pretending I'm happy for you when my heart breaks a little more every time you say his name. Silence crashed down between us. Alexandra stood perfectly still. Are you finished? She asked finally, her voice surprisingly steady. I nodded, because I couldn't trust my throat. Good, she said, because now it's my turn to talk, and you're going to listen. She moved around the desk until she was standing right in front of me. I broke up with Preston yesterday, she said. My brain stalled. What? I ended things with him after our Sunday dinner, she went on. He's a nice man, but I realized something while I was with him. I kept comparing him to you. She took a breath, her eyes never leaving mine. Every joke he made, I wondered if you would have laughed. Every restaurant we went to, I wished you were the one sitting across from me. Every time he reached for my hand, I pulled away because it didn't feel right. It didn't feel like you. I stared at her, afraid to believe it. But you seemed so happy, I said. You said he might be the one. I was trying to convince myself, she said, frustration creeping into her voice. Do you know how long I've been in love with you, Liam? I shook my head. Since you brought me soup when I was sick in your second month here, she said. You didn't have to do that. It wasn't part of your job. But you showed up at my apartment with homemade chicken soup because you remembered me mentioning my grandmother's recipe. A memory flashed in my mind. Her pale face, her miserable cold, me standing outside her door with a pot of soup I'd stayed up half the night trying to make from an online recipe. That was 2.5 years ago, I said slowly. I know exactly how long it's been, she replied. I've counted every day since, wondering if you felt anything for me, or if I was just your boss. Your friend, at best. Every time you rescued me from those dates, I hoped you were jealous, that you wanted me for yourself. But you never said anything, never gave me a clear sign. Because you're my boss, I said, still reeling. Crossing that line could ruin your reputation, your company. I thought it was ridiculous to imagine you could ever see me as anything more than your assistant. And I thought the same thing about you, she said softly. So when your car broke down and you couldn't rescue me from that date with Preston, I decided to give him a real chance. I told myself maybe I was just building you up in my head, that if I gave someone else a fair shot, I'd realize what I felt for you was just infatuation. She shook her head, but it didn't work. Every moment with him just made me miss you more. She reached out and took my hand. Her fingers were warm and sure. That morning when I tried to talk to you before Preston called, she said, I was going to tell you all of this. I was going to ask if those rescues meant something more to you. If maybe we could try being something other than boss and assistant. And now, I asked, hardly daring to breathe. Now you're trying to leave me because you think I chose someone else, she said, her eyes bright with unshed tears. Now I'm standing here terrified I've already lost you. That resignation letter says 2 weeks. Liam, were you really just going to walk away and let me think you left for a better job? I looked down at our joined hands, then back at her face. I didn't think I had the right to tell you, I said. You're Alexandra Hart. You built a tech empire from nothing. You're on magazine covers and conference stages. What could I possibly offer you that you don't already have? You, she said simply. Just you. The person who knows how I take my coffee. Who reminds me to eat when I'm stuck in meetings all day. The person who listens to my horrible days and still finds a way to make me laugh. The person who drops everything to rescue me, even when it means his car breaks down and he has to pay a tow truck he can't really afford. You knew about that? I asked quietly. I pay you, Liam, she said. I know what you make. I also know what emergency tow trucks cost on Saturday nights. She squeezed my hand. I'm sorry I put you through that. I'm sorry I talked about Preston when I should have been honest about my feelings. I'm sorry I've been a coward for 2.5 years. We both have, I said. So let's be brave now. She took a shaky breath. I love you, Liam Foster, she said. I'm in love with you. And if you still want to go to Sterling Media, I'll understand. But please don't leave because you think I don't want you. Because I do. More than anything. I looked at her, at the hope and fear tangled together in her expression, and knew what I had to do. I'm still taking the job at Sterling Media, I said. Her face fell. But not because I don't want you, I added quickly. Because if we're going to do this, we need to do it right. I can't be your employee and your boyfriend. It wouldn't be fair to you, or the company, or us. Understanding dawned in her eyes. So you'd leave to be with me? She asked. I'd do anything to be with you, I said. I've spent 3 years loving you from a distance. I'm done with distance. And then she kissed me. Her lips were soft and warm, tasting faintly of coffee. For a moment, the rest of the world disappeared. Alexandra was kissing me in her office on a Monday morning, and the sky didn't fall. Instead, it felt like everything was finally beginning. When we pulled apart, we were both out of breath. I've wanted to do that since forever, I said, resting my forehead against hers. Me too, she whispered. Reality crept back in. Everyone in the office definitely knows something's going on, I said. The door's been closed for like 15 minutes. Alexandra laughed, really laughed, the way she hadn't laughed in weeks. Let them wonder, she said. But you're right about one thing. You can't work for me anymore. Not if we're going to do this properly. Do what properly? I asked, even though I already knew. Date, she said. Be together. Build something real. She looked me straight in the eye. I meant what I said, Liam. I love you. I want to try this if you do. More than anything, I said. We spent the next hour figuring out the details. I would finish my 2 weeks, train my replacement, then start at Sterling Media as planned. No special treatment. No messy office romance rumors. A clean break professionally. After work, though, we would be us. When we finally stepped out of her office, the entire floor pretended very hard not to have been speculating. Alexandra kept her CEO mask firmly in place, but every now and then, I caught her smiling at me when she thought no one was looking. That evening, I went to her apartment. She had changed out of her work clothes into jeans and a soft sweater. Her hair was down around her shoulders. She looked relaxed, younger, happier than I'd seen her in months. Hi, she said when she opened the door, suddenly shy. Hi, I said back. We both laughed at how strange it felt to be together like this without calling it a rescue mission. We ordered Chinese food and sat on her couch, talking long into the night about everything we'd been afraid to say before. She told me about the constant pressure from her mother, about feeling like a failure in her personal life despite building a successful company. I told her about my fear that I'd never be enough, about my dream of someday writing a book that mattered to someone. You're everything, she said simply. Don't you see that? Over the next 2 weeks, we fell into a new rhythm. At work, we kept things strictly professional. No lingering looks. No touching. Just CEO and assistant doing their jobs. After work, we were something completely different. We cooked together. We walked in the park. We curled up with movies that made us cry or laugh until we couldn't breathe. We learned the small details of each other's lives that you only discover when you're not hiding anymore. On my last day at Quantum Dynamics, the office threw me a small goodbye party. There was cake and awkward speeches. Alexandra gave a perfectly polished talk about my contributions, my reliability, how much I'd helped the company grow. When everyone else had gone and it was just the two of us in the empty conference room, she spoke again, this time as herself, not as the CEO. I'm going to miss seeing you every day, she said quietly. You'll still see me every day, I reminded her. Just not here. It won't be the same, she said. No, I agreed. It'll be better. 3 months later, she showed up at my new office at lunchtime with a picnic basket in her hands. Come with me, she said. I followed her to Riverside Park, the same place we had walked that second night after I rescued her from Trevor. We sat on a bench overlooking the water while she unpacked sandwiches and fruit. I've been thinking, she said, about dreams and what really matters, and building a life that makes sense. What brought this on? I asked. You, she said. You left a job you were good at because you wanted something better, something real. And I've been wondering if maybe I should do the same. You're not quitting Quantum Dynamics, are you? I asked, surprised. No, she said with a small smile. But I'm restructuring. I'm bringing in a COO to handle day-to-day operations. I want more time for the things that matter. For a life outside the office. For you. She pulled a folder from her bag. I've also been looking at commercial spaces, she said. There's a place on Oak Street that would be perfect for a bookstore. I thought maybe we could partner on it. Use my business experience, your vision, build something together. I stared at the printouts, photos, floor plans, rental numbers. You want to open a bookstore with me? I asked. I want to build a life with you, she corrected gently. The bookstore feels like a good start. 6 months later, we stood in the middle of what would become Foster and Hart Books. The air smelled like fresh paint and new beginnings. Bookshelves lined the walls, waiting to be filled. A small coffee bar took up one corner, ready for the barista we'd hired. What do you think? Alexandra asked, slipping her hand into mine. I looked around at the dream made real, at the woman beside me who had made it possible. I think the night I rescued you from Trevor was the best decision I ever made, I said. Funny, she replied, smiling up at me. I was just thinking the same thing. Except from my perspective, you're the one who rescued me. From bad dates, sure, but also from a life that looked successful on the outside and felt empty on the inside. So we rescued each other, I said. I guess we did, she answered. The bookstore opened the following month to a line around the block. We worked side by side, recommending stories, pouring coffee, listening to customers talk about the books that had changed their lives. At the end of that first day, exhausted and happy, we locked the front door and turned around to look at everything we'd built. Not bad for a former CEO and her assistant, I said. Former assistant, Alexandra corrected. Current partner. In every sense. She was right. We had walked away from the roles that once defined us. We had stepped past the professional distance that kept us apart. We were just two people who'd finally found each other, despite all the reasons it shouldn't have worked. Sometimes love shows up in the most unexpected places, in a glass-walled office, in a crowded restaurant, in a diner at midnight over cold fries and honest confessions. Sometimes the person you've been searching for is right in front of you, hidden behind titles like boss and assistant, buried under professionalism and unspoken feelings. All it takes is one brave moment. One honest conversation. One decision to stop running from what your heart already knows. I rescued Alexandra from terrible dates, but she rescued me from a half-lived life, from dreams left on the shelf, from believing I wasn't enough. Together, we built something neither of us could have made alone. And it all started with a single text message, help. If this story touched you, made you think of someone, or reminded you that sometimes you need to take a risk for something real, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next story. Tell me in the comments, have you ever felt something for someone and stayed silent out of fear? What would you do differently now?